All right, hello, rockers and rollers. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am beside myself with excitement today. I am honored. I have a very, very special guest, um, the legendary, the indelible Mr. Roger Earl, of course, of the mighty, one of the most influential bands of all time, Foghat, and of course, also ex. You were also in Savoy Brown, sir. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Victor, it's nice to see you. Nice to meet you. I'm probably doing far better than I should at my age. In fact, sometimes I wake up in the mornings and say, wow, I feel great. And then other times I wake up in the morning and say, I'll go back to sleep. But today was one of those days where I got up and said, wow,
Nice.
because there's a hurricane just off the coast of New
Oh,
York. I've got to wake up and I've got to put stuff away and mow the lawn before it gets anyway.
well, and I think you have some other reasons to be really excited. You have, if I've done my math right here, the 19th album of Foghat, studio album of Foghat, is being released November 10th. Sonic Mojo, which I cannot wait for this album to come. Well, I'm lying. I've heard the album. It's incredible. I can't wait for the official release. It's fantastic. So that's something really big and exciting for you. And I think the second single was released today, right?
Yeah. Next Friday.
Oh, next Friday. Okay.
She's a little bit of everything. Um, the first two singles are written by Kim Simmons, my longtime friend, and who gave me my first real job in Savoy Brown back in 1968. Wow. We did our last previous studio album, which was called Under the Influence. We had a number of friends on there. I invited Kim Simmons to come down and play on it. Scott Holt played on it. Nick Jameson played on it. Craig McGregor and the current band at the time. Tom Hanbridge produced it.
Mm.
And I picked Kim up at the airport and took him to his hotel, and I said, you want to take a nap or come down tomorrow morning? He said, no, I want to go to the studio. So he went to the studio and we just put the tracks on, and he put some amazing guitar. I mean, he really was an amazing a musician and a fantastic writer. I mean, every year he would put out a record. Sometimes he would put out 2 records a year.
Right.
How do they do that sort of thing? We struggle every day, 3 or 4 or 5 years. But yeah, the current record, Sonic Mojo, was a ton of fun to actually make. The way we sort of function is we have a studio down in Florida, in DeLand, Florida. So I live on Long Island. The rest of the other guys in the band live in Florida.
Mm.
So they have to tolerate the heat and stuff. But I come down January, February, March, and April, and that's when we practice. We work up some we always put 4 or 5 different songs in the set. There are some songs that we will play forever, and I don't have a problem with that. Um, so it's fun, but then once we get our juices flying, and we'll often just play, just to get everything going. And then Brian Bassett, our lead and slide guitar player, he's our producer and engineer and the bright one in the band. And he gets all the mics sort of set up around our living room, and we start recording. And interestingly enough, when Sonic Mojo, when we got to the final stages of getting the songs down and deciding what we wanted to do, we would find tracks that we did 2 or 3 years ago
Oh,
or
interesting.
more, and go, wow, what's this? There was one song on there, She's Dynamite, which was originally recorded by BB King, I think, when he was on maybe and doing the Sun label, very early days anyway. And then there was a couple of other songs, and we said, and they all came from jams that we had, and riffs and stuff that I'd forgotten about. We'd all forgotten about, but Brian Bassett, who was the bright one in the band, finds these things. And there was one song, and it sounded like it was finished. It had guitars, vocals, bass, everything. And I said, who's playing bass? Because Rodney wasn't there that day, Rodney O'Quinn. And I look at Brian, he said, I did.
Oh, nice.
So he was doing double duty that day. But yeah, it was a lot of fun making this record. It's probably, because I'm an import, I moved here in like 73, 74, but I've been coming to the States since 1968 when I was in Savoy Brown. For me, this was always, it felt like coming home. This is a land of music.
Yeah.
Blues, jazz, bebop, rock and roll, country, hillbilly music, gospel music. This is, and one of the wonderful things about the States is we had this wonderful melting pot of different ideas and stuff that have come here. We'd be nothing without the Africans, by the way, as far as I'm concerned. But there's this, and out of it comes all this wonderful music. And growing up in London, even my earliest recollections, it was always American music that my dad was playing, or my grandmother in the East End of London was playing on her record player. She had the first record player I ever saw, the one with the little dog, peering into. And so coming here for me was like coming home. I'm very comfortable in my adopted home. I love it here. The fact, and when I first came here, like with Savoy Brown, I was seeing, musicians, especially blues and jazz players that I'd only had seen on record or heard on record. And all of a sudden meeting these people, saying hello to Bobby Blue Bland. That was like,
oh, wow.
Meeting, playing with, meeting Chuck Berry. I didn't get to play with him, but I met him a couple of times. That was interesting. Buddy Rich, I sat in his club in New York back in the 60s, at late 60s, I think it was. I was about 20 feet from him. And I think he had like probably an eight-piece band, I think. And it was like, when you hear stuff like it's like magic. It's like, wow, it's like, this was anyway, and Willie Dixon. Who wrote? Without people like Willie Dixon, there would be no rock and roll. He was the producer and bass player, of course, at Chess Records. And I met Willie Dixon. I went to his house and ate with him and his family, and he was a beautiful man. And I met his family. Muddy Waters, I met Muddy Waters and played with Muddy Waters. I backed him up at the show we did in 1977. John Lee Hooker, he was interesting too. Boogie without John Lee. Johnny Winter, hung out with Johnny and played with Johnny many, many times. There's just so many people. It's like, it's the land of music. And I love it here.
I love the fact that you said it, it's like coming home, because even though it's interesting that you say that, because I've always thought that although, especially the original Foghat band was an English band, but it always felt like a quintessential American rock band to me. Like and when I was a kid, when I found out you were actually English, I was kind of shocked. So I just thought it was like, oh yeah, this is an American rock band, and like, no, they're from England, and used to be the members of Savoy Brown. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really cool. I wanted to circle back. You mentioned, of course, the late great Tim Simmons of Savoy Brown, who he penned, if I read this correctly, he penned 4 tracks, like basic tracks for the new album, correct?
But what he did was, after he played on the Under the Influence album, he said to me, he said, I'd really like to write some songs for Foghat. I said, that will be great, so long as you're playing on them. She laughed, and he then COVID hit, which slowed everything down. And I think about 3 years ago. He sent me 4 tracks. It's just him singing, guitar. I think he was playing to a click track or a drum track or something. And sent us 4 songs. We did 3. The 4th one is one of those songs that's sitting in the closet at the moment down in Florida, along with maybe about 30 or 40 other songs. When we were putting the album together, we decided it was just going to be a single vinyl and, you know, 1 CD, not a double CD. And it wasn't a deliberate thing, but it ended up like every song has a different feel to stuff. Like the songs that Kim wrote for us, which of course we put all the music to and changed all that. But the lyrics, you know, she's a little bit of everything. It's just this great rock and roll tune. I think it was written about his wife Debbie, who is very attractive. She wasn't written about her, but I believe it was. And Driving On is just about what we go through. And when we Scott Holt and I were actually working on it, first of all, we just sat down in the room because he plays the rhythm and I'm the drummer. We had to try and figure out how the words and everything's working. And we both hit the nail on the head. It's like, we're going to channel Slim Harpo on this one. Now, of course, you know, ZZ Top comes to mind as well. Probably one of my favorite bands anyway. Always was. When we first came to the States back in 1962, we did a bunch of shows with ZZ Top. What a great band. Anyway, I digress. Hold on a second. Billy Gibbons, probably one of the greatest guitar players ever. Oh, I'm sorry, I digress. ZZ Top. I love that band. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Yeah, great band. Great band.
I'll get on with Driving On. Anyway, Driving On has this like it's all about trying to get home to the love of your life, and you're on the road, you're driving through the night, and it's this classic boogie. So that was a lot of fun. That was also once Scott and I had figured out the basic arrangement and how we're going to play it. It was just 1 take.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was just Scott and I in at the room at the time, and we said, Brian, roll it. And then we put the bass on and the guitar on later. I think it might even be the original vocal.
Oh, nice.
It's the way we record is very, I hate to use the word organic, but it sort of fits. You know, we just we don't like break every little thing down. It works because I play great with our bass player anyway, Rodney O'Quinn. He's a great bass player, and we play real well together. Drums, like, you know, we're best friends. We're locked like that. And myself and Scott Holt like just have this. I don't know. It's easy for us to play. We know when we've got something that's working. We know when something's not working. When something's working, we go, this is, and like everything like gels and feels good. In fact, a number of the songs were first takes. It was like once you get the basic way you're going to play this, the tempo, the feel, it's like how many times you have to play it. Sometimes we play it more than once just for fun. A quick story.
Yeah.
One of my favorite drummers is Bernard Pretty Purdy, who has played with Aretha Franklin, James Brown, and a whole bunch of great R&B artists, Jeff Beck as well. Anyway, back in 1973, 74, we were doing an album in New York City. I think it was the Energized album. And Dave and I were good friends. We started hanging out with our producer, Tom Dawes, at the time, who produced tons of people and did all sorts of stuff. And used a bunch of session people. And we went back to Tom's apartment in Manhattan, and Tom introduced me to Russian vodka. Dave didn't drink vodka; he would drink wine, but he didn't touch that horrible stuff. But anyway, Tom and I are sitting there. and we're talking about recording and what we're doing, and he talked about Bernard Purdie, and Dave and I sort of went, "You know Bernard Purdie?" He said, "Yeah, I use him all the time on my sessions." And Dave Dave looks at me and says, "Well, can we get him to come and play with us as well?" And Tom Dawes, our producer, said, "Yeah, you have to pay him, but he'll turn up. He loves to play." And like Dave and I said, "Well, can you bring him down the studio?" So yeah, it was really cool playing with like one of your musical heroes. He's an incredible human being, a fantastic drummer. Anyway, we set up side by side in the studio. And I mean, I knew all the songs, and Tom had written out the charts for him for these 3 songs we were going to do. And after he'd set up a few things, set his pedals down, he brought his own hi-hat, and he looked over at me, and we shook hands because I didn't want to bother him. Beautiful man, he had a smile that comes out here, and he says, "So this is how we're going to do this." And I'm listening because I'm in presence of one of my heroes. He said, "We'll play it the first time to get the arrangement right. We'll play it the second time to get the song right. We'll play it a third time for fun." And that stayed with me forever. You've got to play a song more than 3 times. Maybe you should move on. So yeah, that's a little story. Bernard, one of the greatest drummers that has ever sort of graced a drum kit.
Yeah, great drummer. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really interesting. I wanted to ask you about the writing process for and maybe not just the new album, but kind of just, you know, historically for the band. What is the writing process like? Is it, I mean, I would imagine maybe it changes here and there, but, you know, is it kind of riff driven? Does it start with lyrics? Does it start with you know, a drum, you know, a little drum lick, or yeah, kind of how do you guys write? What's kind of your process?
It's sort of like controlled chaos.
Okay, I like that.
uh, um, it's varied over the years. Back in the day, Dave was the main writer in the band, though Rod contributed a couple of great songs actually. But Dave would like write, and then the band would organize it and, you know, get everything sort of functioning. In fact, Foghat always played as a band. It was always a band effort. It wasn't like you do this, you do this, you do this. You know, like I guess some bands have a leader. It was Dave was the main songwriter. Rob Price was the lead and slide guitar, though Lonesome Dave could play a pretty mean guitar as well. Yeah. And myself and Craig McGregor, or whoever was playing bass. It was always a band. When we did the Fall for the City album, it was Nick Jameson had joined us, he and I were really good friends, had lived up in Woodstock together. We used to go out and jam together, play badminton together, and jam at the local bars. When he joined the band for the Fall for the City album, that was a very different process. Nick had a huge hand in arranging songs, whereas prior to that, it was the band. Where now we had this other person, Nick Jameson, who is a genius. One of these, don't you hate people who can do everything great? you met anybody ever that does everything great?
Yeah,
don't you hate them? Anyway, Nick Jameson is like that. He plays every instrument he picks up. He plays great, even if he's never played it before. Right. I'll give you an example. I went to his wedding. This was a number of years ago, and he decided it was going to have a Zydeco feel, so he had to get a concertina. Had to learn to play it.
Oh wow!
2 weeks before his wedding, he buys a concertina and learns to play it, and that's he's in the band playing Zydeco.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
And of course, there was a lot of drummers there, so we raided the kitchen for pots and pans and sticks. But yeah, and I probably learned more from working with Nick Jameson than any other individual. we were just, because he was also the bass player and the drummer, there was that we would line up. But
And
as
great
a
producer too.
yeah, and like as a percussionist, he could play everything. It was There was only one person, Nick Jameson, but that was a different process. Nick would like 90% of the arrangements on the Fall for the City album were influenced by Nick Jameson, whereas other times it's the whole band. But that one was, I have to give Nick credit for. Well, I'll give you an example. Slow Ride. Slow Ride came from a jam. Myself and Rod Price used to have a house out here in Long Island, and we'd had the basement soundproofed. And Nick Jameson just joined the band, and he came to the house. And Dave started like playing, the riff to Slow Ride, which is basically a John Lee Hooker riff, just played in 4/4 as opposed to like a shuffle. And we just jammed the whole song. And Dave said, "Well, I think I've got some words that will work for that." Nick Jameson arranged the song.
Oh, okay.
It was all done. We all played it. It was like the beginning. Nick said, "This is a classic." Nick said to me, "Rog, just go bang." I said, "What do you mean, go bang?" He said, "Just go bang." So,
just
man, just go bang. So it was like, with the two floor toms and the bass drum, and that was the start of it. Obviously we played, but then Nick would go, "Hold on, let's do this," and then there would be the drum and bass breakdown in the middle. It was always fun working with Nick Jameson. We're talking about how we go about making records, and then like the record we did, Night Shift album, that was very different. It was the first album we did with Craig McGregor. We did it over in Connecticut with who was the producer? He was the bass player in. All right. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. But Rod and Dave had been struggling to write songs and stuff, so nearly every song on that album was done to a click track, which was, something I could do because I'm a drummer. When I first started playing, you played to a click track or a metronome. But that was kind of strange because myself and Craig McGregor would be in the main room where the drums and the bass were, and they'd have guitars everywhere else, and you had your cans on. And Dave would come in, sit with his guitar, and go, guitar solo, and then he would mumble some words, and Craig and I were supposed to figure out and like pick it up when the guitar solo came in, and I pull it in and get fills in and do what. And so that was a very different way of making music. But Night Shift was one of my favorite records. I was really happy with the way it sounded and played. It had stuff in the music that we were making then that we hadn't done before, or parts that we hadn't played before, and I really enjoyed that. That was interesting. But now it's Scott and I sit in the living room, and Brian as well, and Rodney, of course. But usually it's Scott and I sit there. We have either a riff or we have some lyrics written, myself, or Scott mostly does the writing. Brian comes up with these great guitar riffs. And anyway, Scott and I will be just sitting there and like going over some stuff that we've agreed to sort of have a go at. And as soon as we latch onto something, we start playing it. I get on the drums. He turns his guitars up and we start playing it. And when I get a grin from Scott, it's like we start it from there. And then we'll either put it down like that just to get it down so that we have it, or we'll just, Brian will press a button, pick up his guitar and start playing with us. And the same with Rodney. So it's interesting. Then other times we'll just, the four of us will sit there and just start playing until we find something that we really like, and then refine it.
Nice.
And sometimes it's just, there was one track, I think, with just drums. It was, because this is on the Mojo, Sonic Mojo album. The year before, I'd torn my shoulder muscles. There was all
Right.
this part had fallen down and so I was in a lot of pain. Not really music. I wasn't in pain. Anyway, I was struggling. I had this athletic tape taping my muscles up on my arm, my left arm, and we did. What was the song we did? It was a fast, punky song called "I Don't Appreciate You Very
Oh,
Much."
great
I
song.
appreciate the way you walk. I don't appreciate the way you talk. I don't appreciate you. I don't appreciate your self-entitled attitude. Somebody must have met somebody like that, or read about somebody, or heard somebody like that. Not a particularly pleasant human being to be around. But anyway, we wrote this. Actually, at the time, Scott has a partner. He's a partner in a record store in Columbia, Tennessee. So he's a big fan of vinyl.
Oh, cool.
And he, whilst we were in the studio, after we'd finished sort of playing for the day, Scott always has a guitar in his hand anyway, and I usually have a pair of sticks, even when we're holding a glass of wine. Scott said, I'm really getting into like this punk thing. Apparently he'd found a whole bunch of like Sex Pistol tapes and albums, vinyl, and we were talking about it. Yeah, but they were just a new age rock and roll band. It was, we all in our youth played things a little bit too fast, and that's what they were doing. And and in youth it was always like some of that from coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
Or and so we were talking about it, and that's where that song came from. It was like punky. So I because my shoulder was sort of like a pain, it was bothering me, but I could play for an hour or so, but then it would be like I had to take a break. It's fine now. It's healed up. I found a fantastic surgeon. Anyway, I Don't Appreciate You, I think, may have been just a drum track.
Interesting.
I think I just sat down, right, because we were talking about, there was probably, it had to be a guitar on there. But anyway, all I remember is playing drums and like as fast and as well as I could, and emulating somebody who's angry, somebody who doesn't like somebody very much, and is trying to be very poignant about that in his drum playing. So as hard and as fast as I could. Then there's these rolls that are coming from not any one particular place in. It was just a lot of fun, and then
great song.
We actually started doing the record, and we listened to some of the things that we played. I went, I can do that again. And Scott and Brian looked at me. They said, "What are you talking about? That's fucking great. We love that." I said, "Now let me do it again." They said, "No, no, you can't do that again. That's the song."
That's the song. Nice.
So, yeah, you know what? I am really, really fortunate. I play in a band. I have bandmates, people. They're always willing to do stuff. Always want to play. You get on stage, and every single one of them is like there for the right reasons. It's I'm having the time of my life.
Awesome. And yeah, and you've built a great band, around you. You mentioned Brian, of course, and he's been in the band the longest thus far.
About 27 years.
Yeah, and he came from Molly Hatchet, of course, and Wild Cherry, and then Rodney, another great musician. Right. He's been in the band.
Great bass player on it, and Rodney is also, he's a real road warrior, because when he was with Pat Travers' band, he did everything in the band. He ran everything, arranged everything, picked everything up. Yeah, I mean, he was sort of like the manager. So now he's in the band, and he's got like we have a great team of folks in the office, and like he's just now he can just play bass. Rodney is is a wonderful bass player, great bass player, and he was actually handpicked by Craig McGregor, which is
Oh,
really, yeah. Craig saw him, and Craig called me up after he'd seen Pat Travers play, and he said, "Here, Roger," he said, "you need Rodney O'Quinn from Pat Travers' band in the band, because this is when Craig was ill." We had 4 bass players at one time, and I said to Craig, "You let me know when you can't play anymore." He had lung cancer.
yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
we had 4 bass players that would stand in for him. And then, when we'd have shows like with Deep Purple, like in California, and, it was a big show, he'd say, "Oh, I want to play. I'll come and play with you on that next Saturday." I go, "The Deep Purple show? Oh, is that who it is? Yeah, yeah, I'll do that." We do a show
I
with
love that.
yeah, you do a show with ZZ Top. He said, "I'll come out this Friday, all right?" "Oh, with ZZ Top?" "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I'll do that." Yeah. So, which,
It's
which, was-
nonchalant.
and normally, if we were supporting ZZ Top, we'd only do like 50 minutes anyway. It's not like an hour and a half. Which,
Right.
yeah, I love Craig McGregor. He truly was my brother by a different mother. We didn't always see things the same way, but that was because we were both very strong individuals, and but as friends and rhythm section, he was great. Yeah, I miss him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw him I think about 4 or 5 days before he passed. I went to his house, but hey, you just have to carry on. We're all at this stage. I do it because I love to play, and I'm going to roll till I'm old and rock till I drop. And I play in a great band, and they're all a bit younger than me, which is probably a good thing.
But you're in a lot of ways, you're the driving force. You're the powerhouse of the band, and you're the drummer. You know,
Well,
uh,
actually, Craig McGregor had this thing. He could be really funny. He was a beautiful guy, actually. He really was. But he had this thing. He said, Rog. He said, they're nothing without us. And I go, "Well, I'm not so sure about it." He said, "No," he said, "they're nothing without us. We drive the road. No, we lay the road out for them to travel on." And
nice.
that's really fucking cool. And I said,
Yeah.
"That's cool, Mac. You're right." I do tell the guitar players from time to time that we lay the road out for them to travel on. It makes them laugh.
Nice. Um, I want to, so, Foghat's always been known for being just a really powerful, live act over the many years. So I was curious about with the new album. What do you guys have touring plans? Is that already put together? You got shows lined up? What's going to be happening with the tour for the Sonic Mojo?
Well, I don't think the tour has changed. We are having a couple of parties. We're
Hmm.
having a record release party in New York City at the Iridium,
Oh,
and
cool.
we're having a record release party out on the West Coast at the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano. We're
Oh,
having a record release party there. Basically, I will play as many of the songs from the record that we can remember. No, we'll be um, and we'll intersperse it with classic Foghat tunes, and basically have a party.
nice.
Um, in fact, the band is we've already talked about. Well, we've got 3 singles going to be released off the album anyway, which we've already played on stage. Actually, we haven't played I Don't Like You Very Much. No, I Don't Appreciate You. We haven't actually played that yet, but I talked to the band last week, and everybody said, "Yeah, let's play that one."
Hmm.
Now the set is up to an hour and 40 minutes. I think it's supposed to be in 75, but most of the promoters, if we ask them, say, "Can we go over tonight?" They go, "Yeah." Most bands don't want to play longer. We know we do. So yeah, we'll be playing 3 songs from the album anyway this
Oh, great.
weekend, and I think we just have to learn 7 more.
Nice. I would imagine that's when you have a 52-year career as a band, I would imagine it's tricky like coming up with a set list. I mean, there's of course, there's fan favorites. I mean, you have to play Slow Ride, of course. But I mean, I would imagine it's not easy to, or maybe it is, I don't know. Like, and are there favorite songs of yours? Like, okay, this has to be on we have to play this live. We have to do this one live. I love this song. We have to do it. Or, are there certain, I mean, yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you come up with a set list when you have that much history and that much, this wonderful catalog of music?
That's a good point, because yesterday or the day before, Linda, our manager, handed me this sheet with what was that sheet about?
We had a contest for people to put playlists together.
Oh yeah, we had a contest with our fans for a playlist for Foghat on, I don't know, however they have playlists on, and I had to pick the winner. Well, I picked the winner who'd written down 50 Foghat songs, and others had only written 10 or 20. But the one who picked 50, I said, well, obviously he wants to hear a whole bunch of Foghat, and he picked stuff from every album, and it was interesting. And then I went, hold on a second. I started writing some of the songs that we either hadn't played in a while or hadn't ever played, and I made a separate list, and I took it from all those things that our fans had written. Cool. So I had about I think I had about 14 songs that either we hadn't played in a long time or had never played, that some of our fans had suggested. So that's what I'm going to do, like this January, February, March, when we change the stuff. Well, actually, we'll be playing a lot of from the new record next year, but
right,
we'll put some new stuff in it. It's fun doing that, because you sort of go back and listen to it and go, oh, that's really cool. Or you go, I think I could probably improve on that. Or, wow, listen to the way those guitars sounds. The first record we did with Dave Edmunds, that man is a genius. I mean, I floated that word around 2 or 3 times today, but Dave Edmunds, as far as his creative juices in putting songs together and making records, the man he makes beautiful music. He doesn't, I don't think he writes too many songs, but the way he crafts music and records them, he is he's special, real special.
Yeah. Are there I was curious, so the new album, 12 tracks, do you have some favorites on the album? Like I absolutely love Driving On. I think that is brilliant, and it's a classic. It has that classic Foghat sound. But the thing I really love about the new album too is that it kind of encapsulates almost the entire career of the band in a lot of ways, where you've got these boogie tracks, these hard-hitting boogie tracks, like you said, the kind of the punkiness, and then these really driving blues, like heavy blues numbers, and even like a little bit of kind of Americana, a little bit of country touches to it too, with the Hank Williams song about your brother, and then you close with Chuck Berry, Promised Land, and you guys just kill that. I mean, you just nailed that song. It's also one of my favorite tracks on the album. So sorry, I went through a lot there, but yeah, what are your? I was curious, what are your summer favorites, and what are songs you're looking forward to playing?
It's go to Promised Land. I'd seen Dave Edmunds' version of that on YouTube. We were down at the studio down there, and the day had finished, and it's either CNN or we're listening to music. So the CNN had been turned off, and yeah, right, good, get rid of that. No, stop it. So we had we had the TV on, and we were going to some YouTube stuff, and there was Dave Edmunds doing Promised Land, and I said, this is just a cool song. And then Scott said to me, his mother took him to see Elvis Presley, And Elvis Presley used to do Promised Land in his, or did it Promised Land in his show. And I said to Scott, I'd love to do that song. I mean, it's just so cool, you know. It's like turn it into a real like jazz, bebop, country kind of thing. Yeah. And of course he grinned from ear to ear. And when we did actually start playing, he sort of smiled at me and said, "Promised Land, Rog?" Yeah. And we just started it. Everybody played on that one pretty much. Brian's guitaring on that was just fabulous, and Rodney and Scott do the vocal harmonies on it. That was one take. Once we figured out play, it was just one take, you know. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to play. Got to have a Chuck Berry song on your record.
Yeah.
Where would we be without Chuck?
Yeah, exactly.
Out of work.
Yeah, Godfather of rock and roll, right there.
One of them, definitely.
Yeah. I was curious about. Well, let's take a ride in the Wayback Machine. I was curious about your beginnings as a musician. Did you come from a musical family? What was the impetus for you? What started this crazy whirlwind of rock and roll for you? When did that all start?
But there was always music in the house. Even I remember going over to the East End of London, where my grandmother on my father's side lived, and she had a record player. You know, the one with the dog speaking into the big phonograph, and like you had to change the needles. And she had, I don't know, was it a whole bunch of music? It had Mule Skinner Blues. I don't know where that came from, but this is in, what was I, early 50s, I think. Anyway, she always had this music on, and the Platters, and there was always music, and there was always music in our house. So we lived in southwest London, in Hounslow, Feltham, around that area. My father worked at the original Aston Martin factory. He was a panel fitter.
Wow.
But he would come home at lunchtime for dinner or lunch. And I would sometimes ride my bike home from school. And Dad brought home a Jerry Lee Lewis single, because Dad played piano, somewhat in the style of Fat Swallow, you know, Alligator Crawl, Honeysuckle Rose, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah. Anyway, he had a Jerry Lee Lewis single. I can't remember what it was. Either a whole lot of shaking or Fire, yeah. But it was the B-side he played, which is in fact on our record, Mean Woman Blues. And he said to me, "Yeah, have a listen to this boy, son. He can really play the Joanna." And there was a great piano solo on Mean Woman Blues by Jerry Lee Lewis, which we also did on this record. We did Mean Woman Blues, but that was another thing. Like I wanted to try do the song. Scott loved the song as well. It's one of his favorite songs. And we took all the versions, the vocals of all the songs, like Jerry Lee Lewis's version. He had a 4 or 5 lines that were never on the original version of the song. And we sat there for a while trying to figure out how to play it, what to do. And, you know, part of it is like the cadence of how the singer is going to sing it, and like what we're doing. And then we sort of came up with this like kind of jazz kind of Latin kind of feel to it. And I was working on some different things. And then Brian started playing guitar, which was I guess it sort of sounds like somebody would say, like, you know, Carlos Santana, you know, that very, I mean, beautiful vibrato, and like, so that's how that came about. It was sort of like, and so I think it has this really cool Latin feel on all the lyrics. And we spent some time on that one trying to get because there's an arrangement to it, and you have to try and the feel and tempo had to be so it was open enough, room for congas and other percussion. But I was really pleased with the way that turned out. That was probably the one song we spent more time on. Yeah, Me Woman Blues, like we spent, a number of days, and sometimes we'd leave it for a while and then come back and say, let's try this. But the final version, again, it was like one of those things that we started and played it and got through to the end, and we said, yeah, that's it. This is really good. And or I'd want to try and do something else, and Brian and Scott would say, no, that's it. So I listen to my brothers in the band when they say, no, that's the best you've done, Roger. You're not doing any more because we want to put guitars on this one. So yeah, we have a good time. Yeah, that was really exciting doing that song. And I also got to play shakers and rattlers and congas and all sorts of stuff. Though actually, Eddie might have been on that. My drum tech, who actually plays percussion with us on stage now, Eddie LaFave, may have played congas on that.
Cool.
Yeah, probably did, because I don't want to damage my hands.
Yeah,
conga players, how do they do it? And I've met some terrific percussionists over the years, and the way they play congas, it's like, I don't know. That's a bit dangerous. Using their hands are like fists and like hard. Oh, well, never mind. It's another story, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't want to damage your.
Percussionists are a special breed. They have something like, I remember like listening to like the Allman Brothers a few times and going to see them, and their percussionist was just like out of the world. And then you meet somebody who really knows how to play, and it's mesmerizing what they can do, like with just their hands and fingers. It's I'd rather hang on to a pair of sticks, a couple of clubs.
Yeah, well, it's pretty mesmerizing and pretty amazing what you can do with a couple of sticks. So
yeah, I have fun with it anyway.
Yeah, nice. So I love the fact that it's kind of come full circle, that the fact that you're covering, this song that your dad in the 50s brought home and was, tinkering around on the piano with. I think that's really cool. Like a lovely, that's a really lovely, kind of tribute to your dad in a lot of ways. I really like that.
Yeah, I had great parents. They never beat me. There was always food on the table, and they always encouraged me. We weren't rich by any stretch. I worked 3 nights a week when I was in school, after school, and I'd work Saturday mornings. I started taking drum lessons when I was like about 12, I think.
Oh, wow.
And when I wanted to get a drum kit, I'd saved up about half of the money, or maybe it was a bit less than that. And Dad signed on the dotted line because I was 14 or 15. And he said, well, you've got to keep up the payments, son, which I did. But yeah, Dad, you know what? I don't want to get too philosophical here, but I don't think I appreciated my parents as much as I should have done. It was like I kind of took it for granted. I mean, I had to sort of pay my way. I mean, and all that, even when I was working, and if I came back from home because I'd lost a job or got kicked out of wherever I was staying, I had to pay rent where we lived. It wasn't like free once you were working. It was up until you left school. Once you left school, you were like, come on, you're putting into the household here. But they always encouraged us, and like when I got my first drum kit, I'd been taking lessons for about 3 years or so, and I bought the drum kit. What was that? At 15, I think, and brought it home. And it was only a small house. It was semi-detached, and the garage was attached to another house. So I played in what was the living dining room. I set the drums up and started playing, and my mother went, "Ah, this will never do." So the Dad gave me his woodworking shed, which was attached to the house, and soundproofed it with egg boxes. Mum used to collect egg boxes off the neighbors and all that stuff, and it was ended up like 6 by 6 by 7. But
Wow.
I could play in there, and I had 2 speakers, like little 6 or 8 inch speakers, man, small, and it was attached to the Grundig tape player in the house, ran through all the house, and I would start it, and then I would go in there, I'd shut the door and lock it, and it would be coming through this, and I would play Chuck Berry songs, Muddy Water songs, Jerry Lee Lewis songs. I wasn't very good at that. They had a really interesting drummer, and blues songs. I played all sorts of stuff, whatever, often my brother would like record stuff from the radio and put it on there. I don't think I was actually recording that. And I played the records. I would sit down, listen to a record and play on my pad, then go out in the drum room and try and emulate it. But around 8:30, 9 o'clock, the lights and the sound would go out. Mum would say,
"You're done.
You've had enough. You're not annoying the neighbors anymore." I don't think I appreciated my parents as much as I ought to have done, but there was a lot of love in my family, and they were always there for me. And
that's cool. That's cool.
It was cool. Music was always big in our house. There was always the radio, the TV. Anytime there was any kind of musical special on, Mum and Dad would turn it on.
Nice.
So yeah, that part was great.
I love it's fascinating to me, like just the fact that you're playing in a shed with the egg packages. It's just very humble beginnings for one of the most iconic drummers in rock and roll history. I mean, that's just that's fascinating to me. And I also love this circles way back to the beginning of the interview. You mentioned Slow Ride, iconic, one of the most iconic drum openings of all time. And the fact that it was just, go bang, just go bang. And that's how that started. That's fascinating. That's really fascinating to me that, something that's so iconic and such a part of pop culture just came about by chance in a lot of ways. That's
Nick Jameson saying, "Rog, just go bang."
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is like, yeah. That's what he meant. Don't do anything clever, just go bang.
Yeah, I love that. I did have to ask you, I'm really curious about, I read this, I don't remember where I read this, but years ago, I had heard that you tried out for the Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Yeah.
And was that during or before or after Savoy Brown?
It had to be before Savoy Brown.
Okay.
In fact, there was a time when I wondered if it was around the same time, but I knew Chaz Chandler because when I was 17 or 18, I'd answered an ad in the Melody Maker about looking for a drummer to play in like an R&B rock and roll band or something. Anyway, and Chaz Chandler had put this band together with 2 guitar players and a bass player, and they needed a drummer. So I turned up. It was like it's a club in Richmond, I think, that he'd rented, or Twickenham, just a small room. And we played together, I guess, for a month or 2 months. I'm not sure. But it didn't go anywhere. We didn't play out or do anything. But it was, but Chaz Chandler remembered me. I was a commercial artist at the time. That was my day job. And I was playing in a band all the time called The Tramps with Ray Dorset as lead singer and my best friend from school, Dave Hutchins, playing bass. Anyway, and then Chaz called me up and asked if I'd heard Jimi Hendrix, and everybody was talking, and all the musical papers, everybody was talking about him. He said, "Do you want to come and try out?" I said, "Yeah." So it was a club just off of Piccadilly Circus. I borrowed my father's car. and I was working at the time, but I guess they let me they let me get away with all sorts of stuff. It was raining outside, and I'm in line. There's probably a dozen or more people, and Jimi Hendrix comes up to me and starts talking to me about some songs he'd written, and it was like he got in line with everybody. But I guess he must have gone in. Anyway, eventually the doors open. It was at lunchtime, so it wasn't, supposed to be open. We went down there. There was 3 or 4 drummers before me. Actually, my older brother and a friend of his helped me set the drums up and carry them down there. Yeah, it was interesting. It was fascinating. I didn't have a fucking clue when Jimmy started playing. He had a Marshall stack and he just started playing. Jimi Hendrix. I'd never heard anything like it. So
yeah.
At first I was trying to find somewhere where 2 and 4 was, or what to start with. And then eventually he actually started playing, a rhythm. There was a blues. We played a Chuck Berry song. I think there was I seem to recall a Bob Dylan song that he played. He was very generous with his time. I think Mitch Mitchell was the right choice. I wasn't even in the same league as Mitch Mitchell at the time. So Jimmy did the right thing. I mean, I remember listening to his first album because I shared a flat in London with my friend Dave, the bass player. We had a record player, of course, and listening to Jimi Hendrix's first album, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
It was like, I'd never heard music played that. The interesting thing about the way Jim, especially a lot of his early stuff, is though I didn't know it at the time, I've realized later, listening to the songs, it was all drawn from blues and R&B riffs.
Yeah,
that was his upper and that was the way he operated. But he changed it. It wasn't like copying something. It was like he took what that was. They're all. I mean, it's all like grooves, and you listen to his rhythm guitar playing, and like or what he was playing, the rhythms he was playing. It's like now I recognize it. I mean, it's obviously changed from what he was influenced by,
right.
but that's the beauty of brilliant guitar playing or brilliant musicianship. It was a sad day when we lost him, because who knows what would have come out of that. He influenced hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of guitar players, certainly people. But I think it's, in fact, Scott Holt, our singer, is, I think he said to me that, when he heard Jimi Hendrix one day and said to himself, that's what I want to do. So he aimed high. Yeah. Jimmy was, it was absolutely brilliant stuff. In fact, sometimes when we're on stage, we'll do a little bit of Hey Joe or something.
Oh,
not for the audience, like sound checks and stuff, or whatever, something else that I don't know about. When I was playing in bands, even from the very beginning, we do certain things like Johnny Be Good and stuff like that. But their first, like Ray Dorset would write songs and or change stuff, like a blues song or something that he'd heard somewhere and made it his own. So I never really did what a lot of musicians have done, like, play in bands that did songs of the day. I never played in a group that played, the top 50. I always played in bands that played either the songs I really liked, like blues and rock and roll and stuff like that. And even Savoy Brown. I mean, we didn't like copy our musical heroes or the blues singers and blues greats. We didn't do that. We always took the song and
made it your own.
Some people, you can bleep this out, and like maybe fucked it up, or like changed it to the point where you couldn't recognize it. But I think it was, especially Chris Jordan and Kim Simmons, it was their way of trying to make their way in the world or to stand out in the world, as opposed to just being somebody that's copying, your musical heroes, which is fine. It's a good way to sort of learn your craft. I mean, I know I did that, but it's I think that's when it gets to, when you become like, when you want to become a professional musician or you want to make music, you take something you love and then change it a bit and like put something on it that's yours.
Yeah, craft it and make it your own. Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, throughout the years, whenever I think, Foghat has done covers, especially the new album with the with the Chuck Berry. I mean, you guys have taken a classic song, but definitely made it a Foghat song. Like it feels like Foghat. That's and I have to say again, like this new album, for everybody watching, you're definitely gonna want to pick this up.
Watching?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
oh, damn, I would have had a shave.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah, I should have shaved too. I think November 10th. Reminder to all of you watching. Yeah, November 10th when Sonic Mojo comes out. Yeah, wait until you hear this.
Hold on a second. The manager said,
"Oh yes. Oh yeah, please, yeah." Yeah, and that'll be so November 10th. Will that be released on vinyl as well?
Yes. In fact, yesterday we just got word that the vinyl is going to be ready. When is the vinyl going to be ready, manager?
What was that?
When is the vinyl going to be ready, manager?
Probably beginning of October, but not shipping till November 10th. But
beginning of October, but not shipping until.
Well, release date November 10th.
When is the release date?
November 10th.
November 10th.
Awesome.
Yeah. So they had the vinyl done. It's purple vinyl.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And our manager did all the artwork, and there's all stories in there from everybody. I'm very proud of this record. Proud is a funny word. You say that about your kids. Oh, there we are. It's like actually, but no, I really enjoyed this record. I mean, I've listened to it. I have the CD in the car. I've got it on my phone. I put my ears in, and like, I like it still. Prior to this, other than like, the initial listening or once or twice after it's finished, I put it down and only pick the records up when we want to relearn a song to put in the set, because then you have to like go, where was that? But I've listened to this album over and over, more so than I think any record we've ever made, which is
interesting.
Kind of interesting. And I'm not fed up with it. I'm not bored by any chance. In fact, every time Promised Land comes on, I want to get out the car and start dancing. That could cause problems on the Long Island Expressway.
I'm waiting to see that on the news.
Yeah, right.
Traffic backed up.
I really enjoyed making the record, and I really like the way it's turned out. I don't want to be like tooting my own horn, but I like it. I really like the record. I like what we did and how we did it.
I think you should toot your own horn. I think you should toot your own horn. It's a phenomenal album. It's fantastic. I'm in the same boat. It's one of those albums for me that once it finishes, I want more. So I start over. Like I go back to the beginning. I get it. Yeah, and it really is like it's a culmination of kind of, but even though I'd say it's very fresh, but it is a culmination of, it feels like kind of this, there's a nod to the old classic Foghat albums, but then it has this very fresh new feel, and it's very bluesy, and it's just a great boogie rock, and I love it. I think it's phenomenal. I think you guys really nailed it.
Thank you. When we did my brother, my older brother Colin Earl, who used to play in Monk of Jerry and play with Ray Dorset, was the singer in the first band I was in. He wrote this song a long time ago. I wish I'd been there when Hank Williams came to town. And Colin, Colin's 81 now. He stopped playing piano. He doesn't tour anymore, but you know, he listens to music still. And he sent me the lyrics. He hadn't recorded. He'd written the lyrics years ago. He sent me the lyrics, and I was talking to him about it. I said, yeah, I think I can turn this into, like, you know, some really sort of fast rock and roll tune. And there's sort of silence. He's looking at me, and he said, well, no, you want to play it like it's, you know, a country song. I said, it's a little tongue in cheek for me, because he's my older brother, so I have to have fun with him. He said, no. George Thorogood always takes, you know, Hank Williams songs and like rocks them up. And there's sort of silence. I said, Colin, we'll try and do it justice. And that was another song. You know, it had the lyrics. There was no music per se, because it was just the lyrics. So again, myself and Scott and Brian were sitting down, and we were just playing with tempo. And I would, you know, rather than just sit at the drums all the time, I have a practice pad and pedal when we're trying to get the feel and the cadence of where the lyrics are going to go. And it was, we've been working on it on and off, like, you know, for days, weeks, I don't know. We would go back to it, and Scott would, like, you know, figure out where the melody was and how he wanted to do it. And then one evening, I think once again, we were watching some musical show on YouTube or something, and Scott just said, I got it. And this was probably 2 o'clock in the morning, down at our studio, and then just started playing the rhythm guitar, the rhythm part, you know, how the cadence of the song. I got on the drums, and I start that song. I think I start a lot of the songs as well. Drummers. So I just started playing like the cadence, and you know, and it was and it came easy. That was a song that we also, you know, there were some breaks and there was some stuff that we arranged, but we knew where we were going with it. It was like Scott just went, I got it. It was like a magic moment for him. He knew what he wanted to do, and then it flowed. Yeah, I'm really excited about the way it went. And then, of course, there's a Rodney J. Crowell song on there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we actually did one of Rodney's songs on one of our other albums. We did Ain't Living Long Like This, which is, in fact, Dave, Lonesome Dave, and probably Eric Cartwright, I think, wanted to bring the song to the band, and which we recorded. And apparently Rodney Crowell was quoted as saying one time, when he heard that Foghat had done one of his songs, because he got money for it, he said, I wore it like a badge of honor.
Nice.
And there's another Rodney Crowell song that I wanted to do. I heard the lyrics years ago. My girlfriend at the time and I were driving down to Nashville, and the line on the radio was like, I don't drink as much as I ought to. And then the radio went off, and I went, what a great line.
Yeah.
I don't as much as I ought to. That it was like, and that's stayed with me for years. And I talked to Scott about it. I think I eventually got it on YouTube. I kept putting in, I don't drink as much as I ought to. And eventually they had all sorts of rubbish. And then a Rodney Crowell song came up, which was, he wrote the song. And the lyric was, I think he just sings it once with his song, with his version, which is a really like, really nice sort of country waltz kind of thing. He's an incredible lyricist. And the music is, I mean, he's made so many great songs. And when we're back in the studio, Scott had listened to it, and of course Brian was familiar with it, the song, because a number of other people have recorded it over the years, and it's like, well, I can't play it like a sort of like some kind of like country waltz or something, you know, like real slow. I mean, I have to, and that was another song we had to work on, this because the lyrics were so great. I thought the lyrics are just beautiful. It's all about, you know, all the hard times, and then you're okay with life because everything is okay. But the only thing I had to do was the lyric of "I don't drink as much as I ought to" had to be in the song more than once. I think it's in 3 or 4 times. And initially, Scott said, "Well, that's not how the song goes." I said, "Right, but this is how it's going to go."
Nice.
And eventually, he saw where I was going with this, because it's such a cool line. There has to be, you know, probably thousands, if not millions, of people that have, you know, after you've probably drunk too much, which has happened to a number of people, and then, you know, you get it under control and you put it in its place. You have a drink or you give it up altogether. But
Right.
it's like, and that's what this song is about finding life and being happy with life, being living with. I feel like sounds like the sun going down. That's another line from it. That sounds like the sun going down. I mean, how can somebody come up with such a beautiful line like that?
That is a great line.
Sun going down, but Rodney Crowell does. And I did talk to him and told him that we were murdering another one of his songs. And I was down in Columbia, Tennessee, hanging out with Scott at one time, and he actually called me back, and we talked briefly. And I said, you know, we're at this record store, and if you want to come down and like hang out for a while, that we would appreciate it. But you know, he called me back, and he's busy, but what a cool guy. And he's written some absolute classic tunes. And then after that, of course, we get to sound checks, is where we have a chance to sort of make some noise after traveling all day in a plane and a train and a car. And I said, let's do the other Rodney Crowell song that we recorded a while ago. I think it was on in the Mood for Something Rude album, which is Ain't Living Long Like This. So maybe we'll do a Rodney Crowell. Foghat does Rodney Crowell. No, stop it there.
Nice. Well, Roger Earl, this has been an absolute pleasure and truly an honor chatting with you today. Thank you so very much. For those of you watching, look in the description below. There are links to the Foghat media, social media pages. You definitely want to pick up Sonic Mojo, which comes out November 10th. Get it on vinyl, get it on CD. It is a killer album, and in the vein of all of the wonderful music of Foghat from the last 52 years, which is hard. It's unbelievable that I'm saying 52 years. But yeah, amazing stuff. And yeah, Roger, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun talking to you, Victor. Maybe one of these days we'll get together and we'll meet. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers. I would love that. I would love that.
Cheers, he says. I'm drinking coffee. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Where's my wine?
Foghat wine, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna have a Chardonnay, I think.
There you go. Right on. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure, Victor. Bye.
Oops.